Welcome into the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Monday after Ohio State 38, Indiana 15. Number 2, Ohio State 38. Now number 10 was number 5, Indiana 15.
That's
Tim,
a lot of numbers for people to keep up with there.
You're absolutely right, partner. That's Tim May, the 41-year vet, but you guys already knew that. It is a Monday after edition of the program. We're going to talk about Ohio State, Indiana. We might spin it forward a little bit to a little
Who are they playing? Who are they playing this week?
A little contest going on Saturday in the Horseshoe. We might talk about it a little bit ahead of Ohio State, Michigan, the game. But let's talk about the game before we talk about the game, Tim. Ohio State, Indiana. We both did some rewatching. We both did some pondering, some inquiring, and some analysis.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about the last play or the last scoring play?
No, that we'll get to that. Tim, first impressions. Let's go offense first because I know what we're going to talk about with the defense. But what was your first impression? I mean, they didn't run the ball extremely well, but they did enough. Will Howard was really good, but they weren't firing it down the field. He kind of took what the defense gave him. I mean, there's a lot to dissect there. The offensive line, of course. What did you take away on the rewatch? You've been doing this a long time.
Well, my takeaway initially is just reinforced by the rewatch is Ohio State should have thrown the ball 50 times in that game and might have won that game 59-7 or 15. It was there in the passing game, just like we talked about in the middle of the week. I talked about on the radio and TV. I mean, that's where I thought you could just run away from these guys. But Ohio State is insistent on, trying to establish a run against everybody. I mean, that was the number one run defense in the country. That they were no slouch. They were all over it when Ohio State pitched or handed off, including that goal line stand at the beginning of the game. So what you took from it was Ohio State being insistent meant that things didn't come as easily for them as it did when they started throwing the ball to a guy named Emeka Egbuka. I think we've all heard of. He's going to walk away with all the could still walk away with some career records, right? And Jeremiah Smith didn't catch a ball until when? I mean, I guess I kind of didn't. My way of looking at game plans is score the easiest way you can score. Move the ball the easiest way you can move it, and that opens up the other door, so to speak. And Ohio State insisted on going the other direction. But you agree. I mean, it was like shooting fish in a barrel when they decided to throw the ball because Indiana was insistent on not letting you have the big play. But, man, Ohio State wide receivers, all of them can turn a short pass or a medium pass into a big play. And Carnell Tate had his series or two like he always does now. They finally got to the Jeremiah Smith part of the playbook. And I guess he does come no, he comes before Tate. Smith comes before Tate, right? In alphabetical order. But I guess that was frustrating is not the right word because I'm not playing that. I really don't have a dog in the hunt. But the bottom line was Ohio State could have thrown the ball all day, and Indiana was not going to be able to stop it on a consistent basis. I guess that's what bothered. But Ohio State still scored 31 points. And then we're going to talk about the final thing where Travion Henderson busts through. And that is talk about exclamation point. That's the exclamation point on why you keep hammering at, running the ball, which I give it up to Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. But then he slides at the 1 yard line with a minute and something left. So Ohio State can run out the clock. Ryan Day did him a disservice by not telling him they were looking for an exclamation point because I think it was kind of embarrassing for Travion Henderson to do that. And then they score a couple of plays later on a Will Howard keep. So sneak. So, I thought that was awkward the way that game ended, but I have no problem with them scoring a touchdown and quote, embarrassing the other team. The other team came in number 5 in the country. The other team had just gone for 2 with really no chance of really coming back and winning the game. So who embarrassed whom?
Well, I guess we'll just get into it since you brought it up. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's stupid.
It is stupid.
The fact that we even have to talk about it is really ridiculous.
I just didn't like the fact that Travion Henderson wasn't clued in.
Well, here's the thing, Tim. I think it was actually done perfectly because Travion Henderson slid and then they ran time off the clock. So they didn't have to put the defense out there for Indiana to throw the ball all over the place because that's what Indiana would have done if they got the ball back with a minute 30 if Travion Henderson would have ran that ball in. Whereas,
wait a minute, are you reading this off the Ohio State release?
no, I'm telling you what would have
I'm joking.
It saved Ohio State's defense having to go out
It
there
did.
and play 8 or 9 pass plays where they probably would have just sacked Curtis Rourke again and made him see ghosts once again. So
I don't think that was the plan, though, when Travion slid. I may be wrong.
No,
I'm not
but
sure he
once
was clued in.
But once you get into that situation, that's what makes sense to me is like, okay, then you run some clock down and then you sneak it in. That way you don't have to put your defense on the field for a full, another full drive where potential targetings can happen, where potential injuries can happen, those kind of things. That's what that's
really,
where
you think they thought all of that through? I'm not.
Once Travion slid, I think yes. Okay, let's run some clock, then we'll punch it in.
Okay.
Because they could have left it after the first sneak, but they didn't. So, so let's talk about Will Howard and Emeka Egbuka. Obviously, my bold prediction was that Emeka was going to go off in this game 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. He ended up with 80 yards and 1 touchdown. He is now 22 receptions shy of KJ Hill's all-time record, 22 catches. You're going to get Michigan probably a Big Ten championship game. Obviously, it's not clinched, but if they beat Michigan, they're going to the Big Ten championship game. And then I think no matter what, they're clinched for the college football playoff at this point with everything that happened. So you're going to get at least 2 more games out of Emeka Egbuka, most likely at least 3 more, and potentially even 4, depending on who they play. And obviously 5 if they go to the national championship. So I think that record is probably Emeka's for the taking, even though he went through that spell throughout the year. And then he also needs he's going to need –
Wait a minute. Let me correct something. He didn't go through that spell.
Ohio
the
State,
offense went
yes.
through that spell of not throwing it to Emeka Egbuka. I thought
Correct.
he was going to catch every pass on Saturday. You know what I mean? It was
So
kind of feeling like that.
So he needs 350 yards to pass Michael Jenkins for the all-time receiving record. That is probably a little bit more strenuous on him than 22 grabs just because he's only had 100 yards in 1 game this year. That doesn't mean he can't get back there. He had 93 against Oregon. He had 80 on Saturday. I would be stunned if he doesn't have a good game on Saturday, the way that Michigan can't defend the pass from the slot. So we'll see. So, but anyway, this isn't a Michigan show. It's just highlighting Emeka at a time where he was really, really good on Saturday. I mean, really good. That 25-yard pass that he caught from Will Howard over the right shoulder there on the sideline was incredible. He had a really nice route, one of his better routes I think I've seen all year, to get open on a 4th and 1. Gets Will Howard, finds him open as Will Howard's being hit and throws. I just thought Emeka was fantastic, but even more so, and this isn't taken away from Emeka, but Will Howard was fantastic. It is remarkable the things that he was dinged for coming into Ohio State, the accuracy, throwing under pressure, doing things within the offensive structure, not getting loose with the football, inconsistency, the things that we dinged him for, and we did too because of what we saw at Kansas State.
Yeah.
It is remarkable the way he plays the game under the tutelage of Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Billy Fessler. All of those guys in the room there have done a fantastic job with him. He's put the work in. I thought Saturday was just insanely impressive. And I think everyone nationally would agree with that, had a ball not gone off of Jelani Thurman's hands and got picked off. Because that throw, PFF does those. I know we don't love PFF numbers here, Tim, but PFF does those turnover-worthy plays.
Yeah.
Will Howard had 0, but he had a turnover.
Yeah.
So that tells you who the interception's fault was. Obviously, Jelani made up for it later in the game, but
and Jelani got hit. Jelani got hit seconds or split second before he actually tried to make the catch. I mean, it should have been pass interference, for example. But you're exactly right. I mean, I think Will's been a warrior. I mean, do you agree? I mean, a lot of his passes have been under everybody. Nationally, when they look at Ohio State, for some reason or other, Will Howard didn't get in the love you ought to get, but they're acting like he's just standing like a band director at the podium there with nobody around him, and just throwing to these great athletes and stuff. That's not the way it's been. He's made plays. I think you agree with me, right? He stood in there strong, like a 6'5", 235-pound guy you'd expect to do, and made great throws, great play. That little flip pass to Emeka Egbuka for the touchdown, that was a great route. It was a great scheme to get him one-on-one with a linebacker defensive end. And then Will Howard did not miss him, right? So there are all these examples of how well Will Howard is playing. And, when you're looking at some of the other guys that are in the Heisman race, they should be. Travis Hunter should be in the Heisman race. Who's the guy I'm thinking of? Ashton Jeanty should be in the Heisman race, but so should Will Howard with what he's gotten increasingly better as this year's gone on. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and here's the thing, Tim. I think it's extremely lazy, the narrative surrounding Will Howard. I criticize some things for being lazy through national media because I soak in a lot of national media because I like to see what the conversation is around Ohio State and how it differs from what we talk about being around the team every day. Because those people, as hard as they work, they're not around each of these teams every day.
Right.
I listened to 3 different shows from a national perspective that talked about Will Howard in the context of he's played well this season other than that terrible moment in the last second against Oregon. And I'm just thinking to myself, if you are talking about Will Howard in the context of that slide against Oregon, still on November 25th, you have not paid enough attention. He is playing extremely well. CJ Stroud, Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, Troy Smith, Joe Germain. I don't care who you pick. You can go all the way back. Rex Kern, Art Schlichter. I don't care who you pick in the lore of Ohio State quarterbacks. None of them have completed 80% of their passes 6 times in a single season.
Correct.
Do you know who has? Will Howard.
Yep.
He's playing extremely good football for Ohio State. He is efficient. He is not turning the ball over. Obviously, knock on wood, because this Michigan defense is going to come after him this week. But so was the Indiana defense. And I just think that if you're talking, especially after this Indiana game, where the yardage isn't crazy, but the completion percentage and the efficiency were crazy, if you're still talking about him in the context of one play against Oregon, you're probably doing it wrong. And I think he's going to make you look silly if Ohio State gets a rematch against Oregon. Am I off base there?
No, you're not off base. I mean, you almost made you look silly in the Oregon game to begin with. Like you said, he was put into a box and told to escape from it. I think by Ohio State's play calling or the idea of still going for it after you get to the 28-yard line. I mean, I thought that was, now I say that he completed a pass to Jeremiah Smith that was I think was a first down, right? But pass interference, offensive pass interference, a rare call, but a call nonetheless was called against Jeremiah Smith, which put Will Howard back in that box. So now, it was almost a can't win situation there at the end. But I agree with you 100%. I mean, I don't think we're gushing here about anything at all. When you complete 80% of your passes 6 straight games, which includes that Oregon game, you're playing pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Enough said, right?
Yeah, I agree. All right, Tim, let's move on from Will Howard. We talked about him a lot. What did you think of the offensive line on Saturday? And I'll preface it a little bit. Again, we take PFF numbers for what they are worth, but the 2 highest graded guys, according to the folks down in Cincinnati, were Carson Hinsman, the center, in his first start since last year in the Michigan game, and Austin Sareveld at left guard in his first start since he played a MAC team a couple months ago. That's a good sign for Ohio State.
Who did I pick to be my offensive MVPs?
Tim. Again, that preface was to give you some credit to let you off your leash a little bit.
It's hard. I'm getting older, and it's hard for me to reach all the way back here.
Oh yeah.
But because if they were going to have success, it was going to be primarily because those 2 guys played their rear ends off in their new roles. I mean, Austin Sareveld, who played, Will Howard got it a little bit backwards when he was praising Sareveld in the post game, because he started the first 2 games at left guard, for Donovan Jackson, way back when Donovan Jackson couldn't play. I mean, so not right guard, and he played some right guard, obviously, also this year some, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the guy played extremely well, and 1 touchdown run was at Travion Henderson left in there where he cut it up, and it looked like the entire Ohio State offensive line was in about a 5-yard stretch there, 4-yard stretch there. Everybody got to the scene of the accident, which was Indiana getting shoved back into the end zone for the most part. Austin Saraville taking his guy almost out of bounds, kind of like a blind side block, from the blind side movie. And then Carson Hinsman, I don't think he had a bad snap. Now his snaps aren't the robust kind. He kind of lobs it back there instead of more of the bullet type that Seth McLaughlin issued. And I think they got that ironed out during practice in the previous week, obviously, because I didn't think Will Howard had any problems with any snaps that I remember. But just the way those two guys stepped up and played, I'm not sure anybody in the country, I haven't done a total analysis. Alabama's had a few injuries on its offensive line, but I'm not sure anybody has dealt with the challenges on Ohio State offensive line. I shook Justin Fry's hand as he was leaving the building on Saturday after our interviews were done. He had a pizza, actually a bumped fist with him because he had a pizza box in his hand. You know how they all get a pizza box and a milkshake leaving. But dude, yeoman's work by him and Mike and all those other guys involved with the offensive line, getting yet another version of it ready to go against the number one run defense in the country and one of the top defenses in the country, which was Indiana. No matter how they got there, they were ranked there. And Ohio State, as I keep telling everybody, the thing that sets Ohio State apart from almost every other team is if you stuff their run, they can beat you throwing the ball. That still means you got to have protection. I mean, Indiana was running some gambits, some twists, things like that. I thought the Ohio State offensive line did great work against those things for the most part. Did a few things leak? Yeah, they always do against just a dynamic defensive front like Indiana had. Did they let some guys through on run plays? Yeah, they did. I mean, the worst thing is a guy in your backfield, even on that fourth and one or whatever at the goal line when they let a guy just come free. But I blame that on the play call I call it the cocked pistol, where you've got two guys, one on one side of Will Howard and the other behind him, and the handoff is so damn deep, in the backfield. It welcomes a guy getting into the backfield and making a play. So I blamed it more on the choice of plays there instead of getting into robust and just doing it, right? What's so hard about that? But that's a story for another day or a question for Chip Kelly tomorrow. But I digress. Yeah. Do I have an opinion? I think I've gone on now for 2 minutes on this. I thought they played their rear ends off and they earned the Tim May offensive MVP award for the game.
Yeah, the most pressures given up in this game were Donovan Jackson with 2, but he was going against Kamara, who's an all Big Ten caliber defensive end.
That guy reminds me of Corey Moore. I don't know if you remember that name from Virginia Tech in the late 90s. I got to cover that championship game, Virginia Tech versus Florida State way back when, the Superdome. Yeah, he's so quick. He reminds me of that guy from Missouri, remember, in the bowl game? Yeah. I can't remember his name. I think he was number 16. But yeah, but you're right. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're yin my yang, brother.
Yeah, so Kamara's a good defensive end. I thought Donovan Jackson did a pretty decent job against him. The real test comes. I know he's had the test against Kamara now. He's had the test against Abdul Carter, another test this week against Derek Moore, against Josiah Stewart. Those guys are extremely good. This Michigan defensive line, look, guys, I know the Michigan team is not what it maybe could be this year, but that defensive line is damn good. And Ohio State's going to have its hands full this week. It was good to see them pass the test this week against Indiana to build some momentum for a guy like Carson Hinsman, just to see one go through in a basketball term, just to see a game under center to be completed and to do well. I think that means good things for him going against Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Rayshawn Benny this week. Same with Austin Saraville, to see one go through the hoop against a Big Ten team and to do it against the top 5 Big Ten opponent with the number 1 run defense in the country. You were 40 yards over what they allow, or 50 yards over what they allow on the ground per game. I know they
thank goodness for that Travion Henderson run, right?
They didn't run the ball really well, but even if they didn't have that, they were still 15 yards over Indiana's average. Yeah. I'm not asking for silver linings there because they didn't run the ball well enough, to be honest. But they did it time and time again, and then they ended up busting free for a run. I thought that was a good sign. Again, just to see one go through for this offensive line, I thought was a good idea for them. We're going to get to a lot more defense and special teams because we got to talk both defense and special teams. But we're going to do it on the other side of the break. Ohio State fans, let me tell you something about Rhoback activewear. There's only one way to describe Rhoback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback just released their new game day collection, and it's awesome. With novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing this level of custom designs with the quality of activewear. Rhoback does it better. Rhoback's everyday short are the perfect pairing as well. They are comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short, but the comfort of athletic shorts. Rhoback is also proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with college stars Jalen Milroe, the quarterback at Alabama, Quinn Ewers, quarterback at Texas, former Buckeye, and Ohio State safety Caleb Downs, one of your favorite players on the team. I know it. Among others, they're becoming the go-to brand for college athletes. They've got a lot of Ohio State stuff, the Block O on some things, Ohio State logos all over those polos. Use the code Lettermen20 on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of the week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Lettermen20. Go check it out. Rhoback Activewear. Enter the code Lettermen20 for 20% off your first purchase from our friends over at Rhoback. I've been rocking the Rhoback hoodie for a long time. Come join the fun. You've been wanting Rhoback. Now you've got a chance to get some Rhoback and get the Ohio State logo on Rhoback. Go to Rhoback.com, Lettermen20 for 20% off your first purchase from the folks over at Rhoback. We're back. Tim May, Spencer Holbrook, of course. You guys know the drill. Defense, Tim. Dominant. I don't know if there's another word to use. They gave 70 yards on the first drive of the game for a touchdown, and it looked quite easy. Indiana did it with downfield passing. They did it by getting Davison Igbinosun to commit pass interference, and they did it by running the football. I think 8-9 times for 21 yards. Curtis Rourke had 32 passing yards, and then they had the penalty yards. Here's the deal, Tim. They got nothing after that. 70 yards on the opening drive, 81 for the rest of the game. They also had a 75-yard drive at the end of the game. So in between the 2 touchdown drives, there were 6 total yards by Indiana. It is as dominant of a defensive performance as you will ever see against a top 5 opponent. It's the lowest yardage total against a ranked team Ohio State has allowed since 2007. And I think that defense was pretty damn good too. 151 total yards for Indiana. Just a swarming. By the end of the game, I thought Curtis Rourke was visibly shaken, just not in the game at all. He finished 8 of 18 for 68 yards. Again, 32 of those yards came on the first drive of the game. Indiana had a little bit of success running the ball, but a lot of that came in the second half when they probably should have been throwing the ball anyway. But they didn't have time to throw the ball. Ohio State really put this Indiana offense in a blender. And all credit to Jim Knowles. This defense was absolutely phenomenal. It was the most aggressive we've seen this front seven, and it paid off big time.
It was dynamic. I mean, Cody Simon, just one quick soap opera, as Earl Brees used to call it instead of soapbox, soap opera moment. I mean, how this guy, I don't know what people missed. I voted in the Buckeyes Award. I voted for him. Be honest with you, I voted for Sonny Styles too, because I mean, kind of I'm talking about, a couple of ballots ago. But the bottom line, I don't see any linebacker in the country playing better than Cody Simon. There are some that are playing stellar, but just, man, his want to forget about how quick he is on the blitz. Forget about how cunning he is on the blitz. His want to get to the quarterback or to make something happen is off the chart. We've seen him do that in several games this year, but Saturday, everybody knew it was a showdown game, and he and his buddies turned it into the shutdown game. And I know I used that on Saturday after the game, and I thought it was clever, so I'd use it again. But yeah, they shut him down. Dude, when you give up, what was it, a 70-yard touchdown drive to Indiana to start the game, or, whatever possession that was, and then the net yardage for Indiana the rest of the first half is 53. Do the math. How that defense took control of the situation, and how'd they do it with everything that they've been with the things they've been chastised about by not having a consistent pass rush and not getting sacks. 5 sacks in the game, right? Indiana came in with 31 sacks as a team and had Zippo, and yeah, go ahead.
I don't interrupt you often, Tim, and I don't mean to. Ohio
Did I
State
have the
did
wrong
this,
stats there?
no, but Ohio State did this in a way that I think should be praised heavily because they've been chastised, I guess is the correct word, criticized, ridiculed, whatever word you want to use, for only bringing 4 at times and letting
Right.
quarterbacks get comfortable.
Being antiquated.
If you watch those blitzes, a lot of them were only bringing 4. But instead
Yeah.
of just bringing the 4 straight defensive linemen, it was 7 guys at the line of scrimmage. A
Yeah.
defensive end drops down. Ty Hamilton sneaks out to the outside. Cody Simon loops around into the middle. And you've got an offensive lineman looking every which way, trying to figure out who he's supposed to block. Sometimes it was Tyleek Williams dropping back into the middle of the zone.
Yeah.
That way the 2 linebackers can come with JT Tuimoloau playing the flat out there. And, you've got 2 linebackers, a defensive tackle, and a defensive end coming at you. Sometimes it was just straight 6-man bring at the house. But a lot of times it was a 4-man rush, but it was the most creative 4-man rush you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And I think Jim Knowles deserves a lot of credit for taking whatever the hell the game plan was against Oregon, with just bringing 4 or dropping everybody, throwing it so far into the garbage that it'll never be found in a landfill, and finding different ways to affect the quarterback while not sacrificing coverage.
Yeah,
because we saw them just time and time again just bring 4.
Yeah.
But if you were watching at home to the untrained eye, it looked like they were bringing 8.
Yeah.
Because they had Indiana on skates up front. I'm sorry.
My favorite play was when Cody Simon caused the fumble that Ty Hamilton recovered, and then Ohio State gave it back to him, with the pass to Jelani Thurman, which went off his hands. But that was my favorite play by the defense, only because you got Cody Simon up there on the left tackle in the left tackle's eyeballs, outside the left tackle, and that left tackle is a good player. And then all of a sudden, Lorenzo Styles comes off the man in the slot, steps into the gap between the left tackle and the left guard. They already had a man up, I can't remember what it was, lined up over the left guard. And at the snap, Styles and Simon rushed. Who do I block? The left tackle, right? Who do I block? Yeah. Well, he didn't block either one of them. Both of them could have made that sack, but Simon gets to O'Rourke, hits him in the back, and causes the fumble. That's great scheme. And like you said, the way Indiana was hoping to catch Ohio State was, get rid of the ball quick. Well, they took that away from them on a couple of those plays. They didn't have that avenue for Rourke to just dump the ball off over the middle to somebody quickly. They took that away from him, and it was just I thought it was Jim Knowles' finest hour in many respects as a defensive coordinator at Ohio State. The way he just took that offense and just twisted it around and made them double think almost everything when it came to pass pro. And the great thing about Ohio State is, or it could have been better, is if Ohio State had gotten that touchdown on that 4th and 1 when they got stuffed, or if they'd gotten a touchdown after the fumble recovery, the game would have been so different. I mean, it was already different, but just think about Jim Knowles really letting the dogs loose. I mean, that's what you would have seen. So I'm with you 100%. I don't think it's gushing when you look at what they did, but as I call it, between the two touchdowns by Indiana, it was a vast desert. It was like watching Lawrence Arabia on a camel trying to get to the other side when it came to Indiana's offense.
So I don't even know what to do with that analogy, to be honest with you. There,
you never watched the movie Lawrence of Arabia, classic?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They sold more pop during that movie than almost any movie in history because people kept getting thirsty and going to the refreshment stand when it actually came out in the 60s when I was just a young pup.
So on this Ohio State blitz that you're talking about, which is just a wild transition, but sure. Again, they only bring 4. So I'm looking at it right now just so we can talk about it a little bit. This isn't a film show either. There's Ty Hamilton, Kenyatta Jackson down with their hand in the dirt or in the turf, I guess. There's Caden Curry standing up at the edge, and then there's a linebacker in the B gap. I think it's Sonny Styles. It's Sonny Styles. And then Cody Simon's on the edge. Well, they don't even bring the defensive lineman. Caden Curry drops into hook to curl. They bring the 2 defensive linemen that are down, Kenyatta Jackson and Ty Hamilton. Cody Simon comes off the edge at tackle, but the offensive lineman is staring at Lorenzo Styles because he sees him coming too. They only brought 4, Tim.
I know.
It was 2 defensive linemen, a linebacker, and a defensive back. And it's just like, where has this been? And why wasn't it, exacted on to Dylan Gabriel? Because if they run this defensive scheme against Oregon in 2 weeks, if they get there, they're going to win that game. They're going to win the game.
What were people worried about? What was the big topic of conversations? Was Indiana's ability to run twist stunts and things like that in front of the Ohio State offensive line with that new starting lineup again? And would Ohio State be able to handle it? Oh, yeah, and back shoulder throws. I think there might have been one back shoulder throw of consequence in the game on Saturday. I'm still trying to remember it. I remember watching the video again last night and stuff. My point was everything that that experts were gnashing their teeth about Ohio State being able to handle offensively and then defensively. They flipped the script on them. I mean, they flipped the script on it. I mean, that's when you know you got a damn good team, is when you make the other team look silly trying to do what it's been doing all year and getting away with. And you're exactly right. I mean, I love that blitz when all of a sudden Lorenzo Styles comes off the slot guy, who's probably going to be your relief guy, but then he looks up, the slot guy, and he's got a defensive lineman staring him in the face. You know what I mean? Come across the middle.
If Cody Simon doesn't get home there, Lorenzo Styles was.
Yes, that's what I just said.
It was again, like you said, Jim Knowles' finest hour. But the problem is here, you've got to replicate it. He's got to be that good again against Michigan, stopping the run. And when Michigan does decide to do trick plays, because I'm just letting you know, like this week, those trick plays are coming.
Yep.
We saw a running back throw a pass against Ohio State each of the last 2 years, one of them at the line of scrimmage on a jump pass, the other one on a halfback toss pass with Donovan Edwards. We've seen the flea flicker from Michigan each of the last, I think, 10 years. So, like, the trick plays are coming. The reverses that they run on the first drive of the game every year against Ohio State. Remember the 2021 game, the first touchdown of the game was a reverse, flip back. Those things are coming. Jim Knowles has to be absolutely. I know Michigan's offense isn't good, but Michigan.
Dude, wait a minute.
They're going to throw
Michigan's offense is 128th in the country in total offense going into this game. Go ahead.
They're going to throw everything at Ohio State, though, and Jim Knowles is going to have to be ready for everything. Because I don't know if you can beat.
I just wonder what they've been throwing at everybody else.
Flaming poop.
They're out of snowballs.
Exactly. All right. Defensively, I think that covers it. They were dominant. It was a fantastic performance. The story of the game was obviously the pass rush and the ability to get after Curtis Rourke. I still think like 3 pass interference penalties on Dave Snake-Benosin. He's the most heavily penalized defensive player in America. And it's not close. He has 13 penalties this year. I think almost all of them are pass interference. I think there's 1 or 2 defensive holdings in there. The rest are pass interference. I don't think he's like unplayable, but I think something has to change because like Oregon's just going to throw it down the field on him and think that they're going to, if they do it 3 straight times, they'll get at least 1 pass interference. Like that's just like Texas will do the same thing to this team. Even Georgia, who doesn't have like great weapons out wide, like all of the teams that you will see in the college ball playoff, and even Michigan, are going to try to throw the ball down the field because they think they can get a free 15 yards. I don't know what the solution is.
Well, I texted the middle of the game, or tweeted or X'd middle of the game Saturday that maybe they ought to make him wear those mitts he wears in practice in the game. And that way, that's like linemen. I don't understand why linemen don't wear like, what looks like mittens, so that they can't hold. You know what I mean? And if you call hold of them, it's because they grab somebody. And we saw that going on again Saturday of uncalled calls here and there. I thought Davison, one call on him was legit. The other was just what every other defensive back in the country does. Kind of gets a little bit of a handle, but basically runs with the guy. But the point is, if he and Ohio State don't understand he's targeted now, watch this guy, and I'm talking about among the officials, then you're not paying attention because he clearly is. That doesn't excuse it, but he clearly is getting more scrutiny than your average cornerback, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I mean, under the microscope. And you know what? If we're all being honest with each other, he probably deserves to be under the microscope because of the holdings and things and the penalties that he has received. But over time, that continues to snowball.
Yeah, and my point is, you're close enough. If you're close enough to a guy to grab him, you don't need to grab him. Just run with him. I mean, it's you know how you start leaning on crutches and stuff. That's the point. Is he's close enough to be covering these guys without touching them. I mean, touching them in the overt way. So, we'll see if they can get that figured out because he's still a hell of a player, man. He had a pass breakup over the middle that was just vintage Davison Igbenogany, just a big guy running fast and taking care of business.
He reminds me of those 2013 to 15 Seahawks corners. Where it was, I think it was, Richard Sherman, Brandon Brown, like those guys, they held the what out of every receiver they played.
Yeah.
And it was a physical game, and you knew that it was going to be physical. And you know what? There was a lot of penalties called, but there was also a lot of just physical football being played. He's getting a lot of the penalties right now. You think that it's going to swing the other way, but maybe it doesn't. He's the most penalized player in college football. So we'll see. Tim, real quick, let's just get really quick. I want to get your take on this. Listen, I can't stop watching the Caleb Downs punt return. We don't need to rehash it because it was incredible. I'm not really sure what else we're going to say about it, to be honest. He's an incredible player who had an incredible moment, and I think that will live in Ohio State lore for a long time, maybe even a decade if they go another decade without a punt return touchdown. So you have the Caleb Downs punt return for a touchdown. You have the third straight week where they've intimidated a punter into just dropping the ball or blocking the ball, because this one I think was just pure intimidation. Ohio State changed up its look a little bit, according to somebody that I talked to, and they think that it kind of had a little bit of an effect on the Indiana punter looking at
interrupt. If you watch his head, he is looking at what's coming, not at the football. I mean, It's obvious.
Yep. And I think that's credit to Ohio State for finding the margins. This team was not finding the margins the last few years in special teams. This year, they were not good on the margins on special teams at all this year. Ryan Day called them out, said it needed to be a plus. They've since made adjustments. Brian Hartline and Rob Keyes are the punt return guys. Putting Denzel Burke out there, I don't know if he's been out there all year. It was fantastic. He was great. The effort was fantastic. CJ Hicks gets a good block there. That's a guy you want to earn more playing time on the edge, CJ. You just probably did because you planted a guy on punt return and helped spring a touchdown.
Yep.
Hayden Curry sprinting down the field, being the first one there with Caleb Downs. That's a hustle and a motor that we've been talking about for years with Hayden Curry. That's going to earn you more playing time, young man. So, the punt return team was awesome, whether it was on the block or the tackle at the 5 or the Caleb Downs touchdown. Then you have 2 punts for 90 yards, which I thought was great from Joe McGuire. He's been inconsistent this year. 2 punts for 90 yards. I think you'll take that most of the time if you're Ohio State, considering you're playing with the lead a lot of the time.
Yep. And
then on top of that, in a windy kind of suspect atmosphere on Saturday, you get Jaden Fielding jogging out there and hitting a 43-yard field goal that gives him some confidence too. I did a report card for Ohio State for the game. I gave the special teams an A+.
Yep.
Would you agree with that? I thought it was probably their best special teams day since God knows when.
Absolutely, an A+. They scored a touchdown. They set up Ohio State for another touchdown. It should have been a touchdown. I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
It was a touchdown.
Yeah, it was a touchdown. I mean, that in essence is basically enough points to at least tie the game. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whenever you contribute like that, like the defense, whenever it gets a score, it's gone over and above, and same way with special teams. Like prevent scores on special teams and make scores on special teams. You've had a hell of a day. And without a doubt, Caleb Downs punt return. I remember when we had that big debate early in the year, me, you, and Andy Backstrom about how many times would Caleb Downs touch the ball offensively, because it was all hinted and stuff. But now people got to see why Ryan Day and Chip Kelly were talking about that in the spring and in the summer about the possibility, because he made what I call innate running back moves on that return, fearless kind of like moves on that return. Then quickly saw where the crease was and took it, and then read his block. I mean, CJ Hicks, CJ Hicks was bragging to him there, and he knocked the guy on his butt on the return, and I think what did Caleb say, something like, because I asked him about it, he said something like, I've got to see that later or something like that. He didn't actually notice the guy getting knocked down. He did notice CJ Hicks making a block, but that just shows you, man, this This young man is an incredibly talented total football player. And I'm telling you, that was as huge a game, as huge a play as any. As Will Howard said, it really put Ohio State over the top. And the first time they touched the ball in the second half is Caleb Downs going 79 on a punt return. That's pretty good.
Here's the deal, Tim. We're gonna get out of here. You know why?
Yeah, because I gotta record my.
You got to record your podcast. You broke up for a second. That's okay.
Sorry.
All right. Here's the deal, Tim. They don't write books. They don't make posters. They don't create legends, and they don't have a countdown clock for Ohio State, Indiana. It was a top 5 matchup. Ohio State won. Ohio State stayed in position to get to the Big Ten championship game and to make the college football playoff, to get the number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff, and to earn a first-round bye in the college football playoff with the win over Indiana, because none of that was possible if they didn't beat Indiana. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Ryan Day said it right after the game, and Jack Sawyer was asked, how quickly do you move on from this game? A top 5 win in the Horseshoe.
Yeah.
And he said, right now, with all due respect to that game, I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about this one. Ryan Day said that they were getting a good night's sleep on Saturday rather than celebrating. They were getting back in on Sunday morning very early. Why? Nobody cares about the Indiana game. I told this to a friend of mine. The most important game in the history of Indiana football was an afterthought to Ohio State at 4 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because it does not matter what you did against Indiana. No one gives two you-know-whats that they beat Indiana for a top 10 win to bolster their resume if they go out this week and lose to Michigan. That's all setting the table for this. We're not going to talk about Ohio State, Michigan here because we're going to do it the rest of the week at lettermenrow.com and on the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. It's going to be an absolute blast of a week. We're going to have so much fun. Tim, Alex Gleitman, and Mick Walker are covering the crap out of the recruiting scene over there. The stuff on the Lettermen Row.
Yeah, there's big stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 5-star flips. We're talking different guys from different programs that could flip. There is a smorgasbord of recruiting coverage over there. Go get that right now because there's another big recruiting weekend on deck. It's $1 for 7 days. You can get the full week of the Michigan game, $1 for 7 days, and then the 50% off for the year. You're going to beg to pay that afterward because of all the coverage that we're given. That's at lettermenrow.com right now. There's also the Lettermen Row YouTube channel, which you're watching right now. Like the page below, please. Like the video below, please. It helps us out a ton. Shows that you love what we're doing here at Lettermen Row. With all of that being said, Tim May, the 41-year vet. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. We're going to eat some good food this week. Then we're going to cover Ohio State, Michigan. Maybe get to Indianapolis after that for Ohio State, Oregon in the Big Ten title game. Wherever they send us, we'll be there. Ohio State football coverage at lettermenrow.com. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com, and we'll see you in the Woody on Tuesday for Ryan Day's press conference.